So, if you are even a tiny bit like me, you get your best ideas either in the shower or when you're out on a walk. And today, whilst I was under the shower, I just channeled the articulation of a few concepts, at least four, that I had reflected on really intensely and discussed with some people that are close to me for the last several years. And they're all to do with suffering in relationships. So I've broken them down in my head and then on paper in four different categories, and I'd like to talk today about the first one, which is ambivalence. So when I talk about suffering in relationships, what I mean is close relationships, as in the colleague that you work with day to day, week to week, the very close friend that you've had for a long time, or that you share really invested common interests with, or the family member that you see or hear from quite often, either weekly, bi-weekly, fortnightly. You just know that interaction's coming up. So what I'm not referring to is the acquaintances, the infrequent acquaintances that you may have in your extended social network and that you bump into every now and again. I'm not referring to those. I am referring to the relationships in your life, the people that make up your immediate orbit. And that's where a lot of the relationship and interaction suffering often is. And it is caused, according to what I channeled in the shower today after years of reflection, by one or more of these four things. One is ambivalence, one is imbalance, one is incongruency, and one is discrepancy of values and levels of emotional states. And now that I'm talking about emotional states, I need to go and introduce you to Ned, who's Desmond's latest best friend. So in terms of ambivalence, which is the subtopic that I'd like to talk about today, I really need to get this off my chest now that I finally understood how to articulate it. Anyway, meet Ned. Hey Ned. You already know Desmond. Hey guys. You already know Minnie Mouse. Hey. Yes. So on the subtopic of ambivalence, what are the symptoms that one of your close relationships is ambivalent? Based on my personal experience, because you know that I love getting really deep only about things that I've experienced in person. So based on my personal experience and also on the experience of a couple of people that I've talked to about this. Hey, I'm Mittens. Ambivalence tends to show up in three main ways. And the first way that it shows up is the quality of the interaction and the quality of the energy that is in the room when you are with this particular person. And often things might be fine, you might be having a conversation or sharing an activity, and everything is fine, and then at one point, unexpectedly and in an unjustified way, it's not. And the way that you know that it's not is because there's microaggressions that start boiling up. So little digs, little nags, little backhanded comments, and maybe a bit of passive aggression, and in general, an overall negative disposition towards you now, slightly higher level of conflict in the interaction that's not really needed. And what makes all of these things, what all of these things have in common when it's ambivalent is that you can't really pinpoint a reason why things would have changed. So these sudden changes of behavior, energy, and disposition towards you seem to be intermittent, unexpected, and unjustified. So you think and think and think, what can I have done to have caused this? And you're not really sure. You don't know. So that's number one. Number two is the very clear sense, which is quite realistic. I'm not talking about any of the irrational fears that might come up that are due to your own insecurities, but the very real sense that this person, whenever they leave the room and they go to talk to someone else, they either gossip about you, or when you come up in conversation, they don't depict you in the best of light. So that's number two. And again, we're talking about people with whom you are very close. Like you share a relationship of trust and supposed mutual care for reciprocal best interest. And then number three is they act hot and cold unexpectedly. So they follow this kind of swing pattern. But you also notice that the cold behaviors tend to crop up more often if there's other people. So if there's just you and them, then things are relatively fine, they're relatively warm, they are relatively safe, there's no judgment. But then the second someone else or a group of people steps in the room, then they start putting in place behaviors to kind of convey to the other people in that room that you and that person, you're not actually that close. And this has happened to me more times than I care to admit. Like, I'd have this friend and be really close, especially when I was codependent. We'd go really deep in the negative emotions and feelings and negative events that they might be experiencing, and I'd try to help, and they would put me on a pedestal and say how important I was and make me feel like I was the only person in the world. And then the second 3 or 4 or 6 or 10 more people are in the room, they suddenly distance themselves and they become cold and they barely talk to me. And so these are the 3 patterns that I've really noticed in terms of ambivalence in the relationships, close relationships and friendships that I've had in my life. Some of them, not all of them, especially in Italy, not a lot here in England, but there were a few with these qualities as well. And when I speak about this topic with people that are close to me, what appears to be the reaction from the people that end up involved in this kind of interactions and dynamics is that it's one of 2 things. They either are able to tolerate the level of ambivalence, they just accept that in certain contexts the double-facedness just comes as a baseline of that context and of that environment, and they kind of find a way of making it work for them anyway without being affected by it too much. Or if they really can't tolerate it, they either go the way that I went, as in giving the benefit of the doubt around a context in case it's not what I've described, but then definitely distancing myself from any of this when I see it happen, or still having a very low degree of tolerance for it, but then deciding to stay in it. And when this last happens, that's when most of the suffering happens as well. And I find it quite fascinating. Of course, I feel for the people that, like me, have a very low degree of tolerance for this dynamic of ambivalence and the way that it shows up, but somehow they either can't practically or are unable to work out a way to either distance themselves or being unaffected by it. So I'll be interested to hear from all of you. Have you had any of these in your life? Do you still have them? If yes, how did you manage them? How are you managing them now? And I'd like to hear from as many people as possible about this. And then when I get the next bout of inspiration, I'll talk to you about the other 3, which are imbalance, incongruency, and inconsistency of misalignment, not inconsistency, misalignment of values or emotional state. And until then, I wish you a fantastic rest of the day and week.